recording. Right, Charlene?
Yes, I already started recording.
Oh, right.
And start.
I think we should start because our host is here and we don't want to, he's got children and all that stuff and we got to get moving here. So I want to welcome everybody here, of course. Love seeing all you guys. I wanted to introduce a new member, but I don't see her on here. So if she comes in later, I'll introduce her again. We have two upcoming events that are great. I was just talking to Esther about this one, and a few of you heard it, and I've been talking about it for a long time. Well, actually, before that, I'm sorry. We have the virtual home tour, finally. Joseph Gutierrez, there's Joseph. Joseph, you don't have a camera, right? You just got the picture? Is he gonna unmute himself? No, there you go.
All right, there I go.
There we go. This is what Joseph looks like when he's standing still on the ocean, on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. I wish.
Anyway, Joseph.
Here I am live.
You guys. Oh, there you go. This guy has done such a great thing for us, and we filmed him in. We just did a tour of the house, him and I, and he's got the most amazing stories of the most beautiful, amazing pieces of furniture and antiques in this house, and did a great job on the house. And it's next.
Thank you.
And we're booking it really nicely. So
good. I'm excited.
Yes, that's giving us an indication that we should do more. So if you guys know anybody else that we should approach that has fantastic stuff inside their house, we will go attack them and do it with them. So this is going to be a great one. It's pre-recorded, but afterwards Joseph's going to do a question and answer with everybody. So that's next month. No, it's not next month. It's May 20th.
It's this month. Yeah.
Yes, it's the end of this month. It's May 26th.
May 26th, Wednesday,
May 26th. And then what else? And then in June is what I was going to talk about is this wonderful David and Goliath story about Rosemary Novelino Mearns is her married name. And she's this little girl from New Jersey who became a ballerina. And at that time, Radio City Music Hall, in addition to the Rockettes, had a ballet corps. So she was part of that. And then in the 70s, they weren't interested in Radio City Music Hall, and they were purposely making films go in the theater too long, and so that they would. She's got a great story about they would see that the ticket prices, nobody was buying tickets, the theater was too big. Anyway, they were going to tear the building down, and so she, strangely enough, got thrust into the middle of being the Joan of Arc to get this thing done. And she's got all these great clips of local TV people and Mayor Koch. She was on Tom Snyder, and she's very animated. It's a great story. And anyway, so that's going to be good. That's going to be on a Saturday, by the way. It's going to be our first Zoom presentation on a Saturday at 10 o'clock. So that's not for wine, that's for coffee. Okay, just in case anyone doesn't know that. All right. So now I'm going to talk about tonight, which we're so happy to do this. And I told David that I'm like the only person in Los Angeles who hasn't been to Judson Studios. So I will get there. So in 1897, the Judson Studios was established in Los Angeles by the painter and professor William Lees Judson and his three sons. Helmed by Walter Horace, the eldest son, and a stained glass expert, the studios thrived from the start, beautifying the blooming metropolis with works that represented the best in traditional and modern design. Today, Judson is the oldest, this is fantastic, Judson is the oldest family-run stained glass studio in America, still proudly offering an exquisite handcrafted product made by local artisans and continuing to serve the community that has sustained us through the decades. 5 generations of Judsons have worked with artists, architects, and designers to create old world style stained glass, whose quality and craftsmanship has often been compared to the work of Louis Tiffany. Famed for its craftsman glass, Judson Arts and Crafts era windows have been celebrated by experts in the field for decades. Judson's work with Frank Lloyd Wright on Hollyhock in the 1920s was recently resaluted when the house was named to the UNESCO World Heritage Sites list. Established in Pasadena during the heyday of the Arroyo culture, headquarters of Judson Studios are still housed in the original Craftsman era home and studio of Patriarch William Lees Judson. By the way, Judson Studios has a big presentation right now in the Museum of Forest Lawn. And they've been praised by Angeles News, Smithsonian Magazine, New York Times, Los Angeles Magazine, and I want to present. You're the fifth generation, right, David?
I am.
Okay, so this is a real Judson here. All right, so David Judson, tell us everything about stained glass.
Great, thank you, Richard, for that intro, and thank you everybody for joining tonight. And good to see you all. But Richard, you're probably not the only one who hasn't been to Judson. Has anybody been to Judson Studio?
I have.
Okay, there you go. All right, a few. And we do give tours. We're not giving tours right now, but we do give tours, and I'll show you a little bit about the studio and that kind of thing. But yeah, so my talk is kind of based off of a book I recently completed. I'll go ahead and throw my slides up here. Sorry, let me get my slide program going. Looks like I closed it in my, there we go. Okay, can you guys see my slide?
Yes.
Great, okay. Great, because I can't see you guys. So if you have any questions or anything, feel free to jump in. But yeah, so my talk is kind of based on a book that I published just over a year ago now. Actually, our book launch party with Angel City Press was, I think, March 17th, or just right about the day everything shut down. So we never really got to have a big book launch and such. But I've been trying to talk to as many people as I can through Zoom, which is kind of a sign of the times, I guess. But I like to kind of talk a little bit about stained glass and the city of Los Angeles, and kind of stained glass as an art form and working with different artists, because I think that what I like to ask people is what they think about when they think about stained glass, because I've found that everybody has some preconceived notion of what they think stained glass is, and so I like to ask people, or people often offer thoughts to me when they meet me and they hear that I work in stained glass, because you don't meet that many people, I guess, that work in stained glass. And so, what do you think about stained glass, or what is it that comes to mind? And generally what people think of is kind of traditional stained glass, right? And so, and that's where Judson kind of fell into the stained glass world, is that we were kind of considered a traditional stained glass studio that did traditional work. This is a work by Tim Carey, who is our artist for a number of years. And this is, kind of a traditional stained glass window. But I like to show people, like, at that same year, 2010, it seems like it was yesterday, but it's almost 12 years ago now. This window, same subject matter, this kind of religious Lamb of God scenario. But the window on the left was done by a German studio, by an American artist. So Scott Parsons is from Iowa. Did this? This is kind of his signature look, which is pretty fantastic. I love this window. And what the Germans are very good at doing, and the Germans have been doing this for a number of years, is working on the surface of glass. So they work primarily in what's called a flash glass, which is an antique or a mouth-blown glass, that where you see the lamb, how it's kind of white and red, but there's no lead lines or anything to break it up, is they use a very thin layer of red on top of clear in one piece of glass. They can expose that to acid to get the clear, right? So the sheet, when they start, is red. By applying a little acid, they can create these transitions of color, usually two colors. And then the other colors they spray onto, say, float glass, and then piece all of that together to create this kind of modern contemporary look. So there's no leading generally. It's a little bit more of a contemporary look, which I've always admired and always loved. And so I've always had my eye on what the German studios were doing. And I'll get into this as part of the story that I'll tell you tonight. So I found it really interesting, kind of ironic, that in Los Angeles, we're doing this super traditional work. And in Germany, this very contemporary work is going on in Europe. And so that, to me, from my kind of youngest days of starting to get involved with the studio, was always on my mind. But that being said, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the studio and kind of how ingrained we are kind of in this, old world tradition and craft. And it started with this man, William Lees, who's my great-great-grandfather. He was born outside of Manchester, England in 1842, came to the United States in 1852, farmed with his family in Brooklyn, if you can imagine, and then moved up to Canada, in London, Ontario, Canada, on the River Thames. So it gets a little confusing, but he settled in Canada, found himself in Illinois when the Civil War broke out. He joined in the Civil War, actually marched with Grant down to Tennessee. I was very young, obviously, but fought all 4 years in the Civil War, went back to Canada and became an art professor, started studying and teaching art. And then in 1890, he moved to Chicago and was very involved with the World's Fair. And then in 1893, kind of when the World's Fair started up, he was told to go find a warm place to die. And that was 1893. He showed up in December of 1893, and he thought he had found heaven. I mean, he showed up and took the train out to LA, ended up in Pasadena, and settled on the Arroyo Seco, where a lot of early plein air painters settled. And he was one of the early plein air painters of the area, and actually painted the Arroyo Seco. That is this painting is kind of looking north, slightly west. If you that little hill on the right hand side, if you go over that, that's probably now where the Rose Bowl is. And so he spent a lot of his time just painting, and he came here to die in 1893. He didn't die until 1928. So I always say that's what California does to us, right? He couldn't afford to live in Pasadena, so he rented this house. I got this house you see on the left-hand side there. It's in Garvanza, which is now the Northeast Los Angeles. Garvanza's a little slip of Highland Park in Northeast LA. And so this is a photo looking kind of north. You see the San Gabriel's kind of a little in the background there, looking north, kind of east now, with the train bridge going out, which would have been the red car. I'll show you in a second. And now, unfortunately, this is part of the 110 freeway, right? If you're driving up into Pasadena on the 110, this is where you're going through, right? Right through this area. But he picked the spot because it fit perfectly in between Pasadena and downtown LA. The red car ran right by this area. And so he settled in there and was able to paint and spend all of his time, as much of his time as he could, in the Arroyo Seco. He was also the first dean of the School of Fine Arts for USC. And so this is the building that he built in 1900 for the school. And this remained the School of Fine Arts until 1920. He fit the bill because he was one of the few university level professors in Los Angeles at that time. He was a Methodist, right? So USC at that time was the Fighting Methodists. So he kind of fit in there. So I think the idea was that, he put together the curriculum, they built the building for him. And so this and I think the architecture is really kind of interesting, almost Viennese secessionist, I think, and probably really stood out at the time in terms of architecture in the area, and was probably influenced with his exposure to the architecture at the World's Fair in 1893. So, and here he is on the right-hand side, you see there, and this is a photo from the USC El Rodeo, which is the yearbook of 1899. And so I always get a kick out of this, painting class. They probably we just walked around, there wasn't much here, right? And started painting, and you also notice it's mostly women in the class, which is kind of I guess it was the acceptable kind of subject that women could study at the university level at that time. William Lees also founded what was called the Arroyo Guild of Fellow Crafters, which was kind of the answer to Stickley's Craftsman Farms in New York. And so they published one journal. So they didn't get past volume 1, number 1. I guess they were better craftsmen than they were publishers. But this is, sorry, my cat's here. They were, this was kind of their answer. This was the arts and crafts community was based right in this building. So not only was it the School of Fine Arts for USC, but it was the home of the Arroyo Guild of Fellow Crafters. And so even back then they used grad students as labor, I guess. The building burned down in 1910 and was rebuilt like this. Architects Train and Williams, who were famous arts and crafts architects. I think there's some homes in your area of Train and Williams. They built fairly large arts and crafts buildings, as well as some commercial buildings around town. They also are known for the funicular, the Angel's Flight. And they were the architects of the Royal Guild and friends of William Lee's. And so this was what they built. The upper story would have been the dorms for the students. And here you see a class photo of just after 1911, probably. I love that shot. And so the building's still intact. We still operate out of that building. And then the third thing Judson did, William Lees did, was found the Judson Studios with his sons. And so these are the three sons sitting in front of the old building. The guy in the middle is Walter. He's my great grandfather, and his brother Paul, and in the front, and Lionel in the back. And so while these gentlemen were, really the founders of the studio, we attributed to William Lees because he did, he got them started. He got them moved out here to California. And helped them, did some of their earliest designs and got them their foot in the door, basically. One of the earliest projects that Judson Studios did actually was Colonial Art Glass. It was originally called Colonial Art Glass in 1897 until about 1906. And was for this home. This is the Phineas Mansion. You may know, if you know the Pasadena Historical Museum, as the Phineas Mansion. This was the Phineas Mansion before that building, which is pretty unbelievable if you're familiar with Pasadena and Orange Grove. This is right on Orange Grove, which in 1897 seems kind of unbelievable. But Mrs. Phineas, I guess, traveled around North Africa quite a bit. And so she wanted to build something like that. And that's what she built. And then you see the skylight here up at the top. Was the earliest commission of Judson that we know. And the Pasadena Museum, Historical Museum, had these photos in their archives and brought it to us one day. And it was just an amazing gift, like, to see these, because we'd never seen colonial art glass work. And so it was very exciting. They have all the written correspondence between the architect and Mrs. Phineas and Judson. And so it's very exciting. This building burnt down, so this is no longer here. We don't know what happened. Obviously, the glass probably went down with the fire, but it's great to have these photos. And then, of course, a lot of arts and crafts work. This is at the Abbey San Encino, which is just a stone's throw from the studio, our studio in Highland Park there. This was a window that would have been done for Clyde Brown. You see his initials, CB, on the bottom right there. And he was a printer. He did a lot of the early printing for like Occidental College and a lot of, he was one of the major printers in the area at the time. And this was a window that was apparently bartered for some promotional material for the studio. And this window is still there. It's still in the Abbey. The Abbey's not in great shape, but the Browns still own it. It would have been Jackson Brown. If you know Jackson Brown's music, this is his grandfather's house. And so it's a great kind of little gem. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a drive by. Judson also did what was known as kind of the American art glass movement style of glass, which is the opalescent glass. So if you're familiar with Tiffany Studios, that's basically kind of a very American thing that opalescent glass is basically putting a little bit of white or milkiness in the glass so that it has some reflective qualities as well as transmitted qualities. And these are very simple, very elegant windows. They're down at Inglewood Mausoleum. And as you can see, these are early 19-teens. They're still there. And we've done some windows recently in this mausoleum. I'll show them to you a little bit later. The Natural History Museum, some of you have probably been in this space. At the top of the dome is this wonderful, it's about 28-foot diameter ley light up at the top there. Judson also did the globe on the top of what's the three muses there, the statue. And this space, we also restored this. As you can see, in 2009, they did a full restoration on this. And this would have been when it was the Fine Arts Building, right? This area was the Fine Arts Building until I think it was probably post-war, when it was basically torn down and most of it and rebuilt in the Museum of Natural History moved in. But this is if you have not been there, this is worth the price of entry to go in and walk into this space and look up. It's really spectacular. Also, the LA Central Library. A lot of people don't know that this dome is in that front hall. This is a Goodhue building. And Judson did this globe in the mid-20s there, you see, and it's spectacular. It looks small right there, but that's a 5-foot diameter dome. It's actually pretty great. The work around it, you see the zodiac signs, was done by Lee Laurie, and Lee Laurie is if you know the Atlas Shrugged at Rockefeller Center, this is the same artist who did that. So this was an interesting collaboration and a great piece. And again, another little hidden gem that if you haven't seen, it's worth going in and seeing not only the murals, but this piece as well. And of course, a lot of religious work. All Saints Church in Pasadena. The window right there that you see is the choir loft window, which is this window. And this window looks very much like a Tiffany. It was actually done by an artist named Frederick Wilson, who was Tiffany's main designer for years. He came to Los Angeles again in December to oversee a project and sent for his family. He says, I'm not going back to New York. This is the place to be. He moved into a house just behind our studio and worked for our studio and another local studio called LA Art Glass for a number of years. This is a great space too. If you haven't been here, there's Judson windows, Tiffany windows, Maitland Armstrong, Lamb Studios. It's an amazing collection of windows done by some pretty important studios from the country. And then of course, some contemporary work, right? I've been showing you mostly traditional stuff. This is the Hollyhock House done with Frank Lloyd Wright. And this is an amazing space, and they're doing an amazing job restoring it. The west side of the house now has been restored. If you haven't been recently, it's worth a visit back up there to see. And this work, we have these wonderful journal entries starting with, Frank Lloyd Wright, Chicago architect, here in LA. And so my great grandfather went and I guess met him. And then you see these entries kind of through the logbook over time. And the last entry is actually for Schindler, right? Because Schindler took over the construction for Frank Lloyd Wright's son. And so it's just a great kind of fun story. We've also restored these windows, most of them. These are in the dining room. Just a great collection of glass. And then of course, Ennis House. Ennis House story is a little bit more jumbled. And I get into this in my book where Frank Lloyd Wright was actually fired from this job and his son fired from the job by the time the glass was commissioned. So we don't know exactly who designed the glass. I do know that this particular design is from a catalog from a company called Jeanine and Hilgart, which did a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright's work in Chicago. But we know these windows were done by Judson because we have the invoices for them. It's really kind of interesting with, and we just think that the Ennis's had a lot of say in terms of what these windows ended up being. But as you can see, they're very different. They're not, most Frank Lloyd Wright purists say these are not Frank Lloyd Wright designs, and they're not. So, but they kind of are interesting to see. And of course, walking through the house is amazing. So our restoration work on the Hollyhock and Ennis House got us some attention throughout the country. And we were actually invited to work on the restoration of the Unity Temple a few years ago. The temple went under a complete restoration. We took out all of the windows. We brought them all back to Los Angeles, and we actually ended up reclaiming all of them because they had been been through so many repairs and bad restorations over the years. They just basically said, look, let's just reclaim the whole things. We maintained as much of the glass as we could. Any broken or missing glass or bad replacement glass, we actually had the original glass custom replicated. Which was a painstaking process, but we matched the glass pretty great. It was very difficult to do, but very much worth it. Again, the space is great. They went back to all the original colors, and it's just a spectacular space. The ley lights that you see up at the top there, those windows, those are actually almost 5 feet square, so they're massive, and they just have this great, beautiful wash of light into the space. These are some ley lights in what they call the school, which is next door to the temple. Basically the same building, and that's that's the building there too. So all of that glass came out and came back to Los Angeles and was restored. A little more locally, we worked on the Wilshire Boulevard Temple. So these are originally not Judson windows. They came out of Pittsburgh, but we were involved with the restoration. And it was really the rose window, that window that I just showed you, that kind of instigated the entire restoration of the building, because they were afraid they were going to lose that rose window. It was so badly damaged, and they were worried that an earthquake would shake it loose. And so that was the first thing that happened in the whole restoration. As we went in, we took all the glass out of that, and they secured that and completely rebuilt that rose window. And then we installed the glass into it. These windows, it's rare for a temple to have this almost kind of neo-Gothic looking glass, but this temple is not your usual temple, being all of the Hollywood moguls who attended this temple and got all of their greatest talent to design and decorate it. It's really a spectacular space. In the 30s, with the Depression, a lot of the work dried up for Judson, nearly shut down, but the mausoleums and cemeteries, right? The business that never goes out of business kind of kept Judson alive. And so this is a different mausoleum from the one I showed you earlier. The earlier one was the Inglewood Mausoleum, and this is the Mausoleum of the Golden West. And so at the end of each of these halls is this amazing scene of a natural scene in California. So like there's a Yosemite, you see here, there's Half Dome, there's Lake Arrowhead, there's these just amazing scenes of California landscapes, and some wonderful windows in that space. Some other Depression era work, the LA Memorial Branch Library. This is a memorial window for the students of the school who died in the First World War. And so this is an amazing kind of painted traditional style window. And again, another great little pop in if you're in the area, to pop into the museum and check it out. So the other thing is, post-war, what I found in my research with the book was that so many of the churches were built in the turn of the century, right? These kind of major churches that we have throughout the city were basically neo-Gothic in design. They built their buildings, up until the Depression era, and then they ran out of money, right? The Depression basically shut down the construction. Obviously, the windows were not commissioned. And so these churches don't really start commissioning their windows until after the war. And so they go back to this kind of neo-Gothic taste, these designs. And so Judson, and not only in the in Southern California, but the United States, so many American studios were doing this type of work during the post-war, this kind of neo-Gothic work. So you see it in South Pasadena. This is a great window, rose window at the First Baptist Church, which is close to City Hall in Pasadena. But there's also a movement towards modernism, right? And so one of my grandfather's favorite projects was the Air Force Academy and Chapel. This is in Colorado Springs. Here you can see it at night. It's fantastic. It's an amazing space to walk inside of. Here you see looking up at the ceiling. And we actually have a crew up in Colorado Springs right now removing all of this glass. So they are completely, this chapel, if you can imagine, is under a big box or tarp. So it's completely covered right now because it's snow season up there. They're totally taking the skin off and completely taking everything out to restore it. All of the glass is coming out. There's about 2,300 panels, almost 30,000 pieces of glass. They're set in aluminum cassette, so it's not a major restoration project. There are some broken pieces, but it's primarily getting them out of the way, cleaning them. Then we have to go through abatement, as you can imagine. In the 1960s, the amount of asbestos involved in 1960 construction like this, there's quite a bit of work like that. But again, one of my grandfather's favorite projects. Very, very honored to be a part of it, and we're very honored to be part of the restoration. It's very exciting. And then, of course, the 70s, right? It's like, this is, me as a kid, this is one of the earliest projects I remember going to Vegas with my folks, and my dad was commissioned to do this dome at the Tropicana It was the largest barrel stained glass dome in the world. I don't know if it still is. And it's interesting, it's completely suspended. So because they were still doing some nuclear testing in the desert at that time, this thing had to be engineered to be able to shift, handle seismic shift. So it's completely suspended above the casino. It's still there, believe it or not. They haven't torn it down. They tried to sell it a couple of years ago, but decided to keep it. And you can see all the cameras kind of up at the top, run down through the center. And there's little catwalks and one-way mirrors along the bottom of the base of the dome, which is kind of interesting. In the mid 80s, this is kind of when I started getting started at the studio. And again, you kind of see the very figurative, somewhat traditional work. It's a little contemporized, but this is kind of the type of work that we were doing at Judson Studios at this time. And at this same period, this is what you were seeing coming out of Germany and out of Europe. And so this intrigued me. I thought, gosh, this is really interesting. Mid 80s, Schaffrath is one of the kind of fathers of this German glass movement that really started in the post-war. But this tradition's continued. And so even today, you see 2013, this glass was done by a guy named Guy Kemper, who's based out of Kentucky. But all these artists, they were going to Europe, they were going to Germany to get their glass made. And so for me, that was kind of like felt like it wasn't right? We should have these American artists be able to do some glass work in the United States and be able to do contemporary designs as well. But as you see these Germans, I was telling you about the flash glass here. The flash glass still very good at kind of removing the blue off of the clear to create these beautiful textures and patterns and movement in the glass to give it a nice effect. And so this is something and they would take this glass basically and laminate it to a piece of float glass so it could work in a public space. And so all of this stuff I was kind of assessing as we went, even though we were still doing work like this. So it's funny, it's like we were getting even more traditional with our work. And this is a chapel. Actually, this is in your neighborhood. This is in Hancock Park, this window. But we embraced it, right? We said, look, if we're going to do traditional work and be known for that, we need to do it as best we can. And so I started looking for younger artists. I trained them in glass painting, how to work with color and that kind of thing. And so we really committed to that. And luckily, to a certain extent, we ended up doing this project, which is the Our Savior Parish at the Crusoe Catholic Center at USC. And this is a new Catholic center that was built at the university. You can see 2012, 2013. I started on this project in 2007, and it took us about 5 years to design and about 4 years to make these windows. And these windows are about 26 feet tall by about 12 to 13 feet wide. And so they're massive. And this really pushed us to try a lot of new things, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. This window is also there. And this is kind of really where I kind of introduced the collaboration, where we began collaborating with a lot of artists. This was done by Gail Roski, who recently passed away. She did a watercolor. This is based on a watercolor that she did. And this is when we start using fused glass. And I'll tell you about fused glass in a minute, but if you look at the flowers and you notice all the color variations and subtle kind of transitions of color in those flowers, that was fused glass. So that means we took glass, fused it together in a kiln to create multiple colors on these, to get these effects. And I'll get into that pretty deeply here. But the other big thing that came out of this project was that it forced us into the computer world and the computer realm. And as you can imagine, coming from a craft like stained glass, there's a lot of Luddites and basically, embracing the old world, right? And so getting the artists to work on the computer was a little bit harder than I expected it to be. But when the Crusoe project came along, we didn't have time to really mess around. We really wanted to dedicate as much time as we could to painting on the glass. And so by working on the computer, we were able to move so much more quickly, not only through design changes, but we were able to, for example, take photographs of these composite or these concept photos, model the figures in these robes that we picked up at an old Hollywood. Hollywood studios sell these old robes like costumes once a year, and you can get them for almost nothing. We'd buy all these costumes, pose the figures, photograph them, and then drop them on top of our drawings and draw on top of those to give us the artwork. And so it was great because it sped up the design process so much, so drastically that we were able to really save a lot of time. And the other thing is it allowed us to print out our working drawings, or what we call our cartoons, into full size through the computer files as well. So rather than drawing, you see that drawing that's on the wall, the black and white, that used to be done by hand, and which made these beautiful drawings, but they just get rolled up and stuck away in the archives, and so that didn't really help anybody. So by being able to print these out, again, it saved us a ton of time to be able to spend most of the time painting on the glass, which is where you see the glass on the light table there, taking paint to paint on those details. So like the face of the lion, as you can see, is all painted on a piece of amber glass, and that's how we get all this wonderful color. And so you can see how great that is. There's a wonderful detail. And so we were very excited. This is one of the largest projects we'd ever done at the time. And then one day we got a call in 2014, and I like to call it the phone call because it was like one of those phone calls that changes your life, right? And the phone call was about this project, and this is the Church of the Resurrection in Leawood, Kansas, and this was a church that was being built, as you can see, very contemporary-looking church for the largest mainline denominational church in the country. So Pastor Adam Hamilton built this church from 23 families to 23,000 families. And so they were, over the decades built larger and larger churches. And so I think this is probably his last church, but, they surveyed their congregation and they said, well, what would, because they were in a basically an auditorium. They said, well, what would make our church feel sacred? And the answer from that survey was stained glass, lucky for us. So the architect built this massive window, or designed this massive space for a window to go right at the front of the church. This was one of the early concept sketches they gave us. This went out to, they did an international search. They searched, dozens of studios. They got it down to 6 studios who were allowed to present a design. And then they narrowed it down to 2. And guess which 2 they narrowed it down to? These 2. And so it was very confusing to see that these 2 studios, right, or these 2 designers were basically in a final, right, and thinking, well, these are very different approaches. So the committee who's making this decision must be split. And so we thought, well, look, we think that we can create a more contemporary window from our traditional point of view, as opposed to them trying to become more traditional from their contemporary point of view. So we felt we had a pretty good shot. And so this was our very first design that we did for them. This is based off a narrative that Pastor Adam gave to us. So you see the Garden of Eden on the left, the Resurrection Garden at the center, obviously Church of the Resurrection, they needed the resurrected Christ, and then the Garden of Revelation on the right-hand side. So this garden theme kind of went throughout. But this is where we started, and this is where we finished. So you can see how the ability to work in the computer made it super convenient for us, and I think really sold us on the job, because the pastor wanted to be involved with some of the design, and so he was able to make changes, and we were able to make those changes fairly easily by working on the computer. And at one point we had to say, okay, Pastor, no more figures. We can't fit another figure in this window. It's too much. So basically we dropped this in, we started working with them pretty closely. I threw that bus in to give you a sense of the size of this thing. It's about 40 feet tall by almost 100 feet wide. So it ended up actually being 3,400 square feet, 161 panels. And here it sat in this church. So here we are, we designed something. I told Tim, our designer, I said, just design it. We'll figure out how to make it later. And we didn't expect to paint ourselves into a corner, but where there's a will, there's a way, right? And so we explored a lot of different ways to try to figure out how we were going to make this window, because it couldn't be just a traditional technique, and we needed to figure out how to make that. So one day Tim was looking through a magazine, my artist, and he saw a guy named Narcissus Quagliata giving a class. And Narcissus is kind of a maverick icon in the stained glass world. If you work in stained glass, you know who Narcissus is. And this is, for example, a project that he did in Taiwan. In Taiwan, this is in a subway station. He designed and built this in Germany, of course, right? He's building in, all the artists are going to Germany to make their glass projects. And this is twice the size of the window that we were making. So we knew, okay, he can work at this scale. He can do contemporary work. Let's bring him in and see what we can do. So we reached out to him, and I'll tell you a little bit about him. This is him on the right-hand side. Narcissus is a character. This is back in the 80s, early 80s, and this is up at Pilchuck. So if you know Pilchuck or Hot Glass, the glass blowing school up in outside of Tacoma, was founded by Dale Chihuly, and that's Dale Chihuly right there. So before the eye patch, you probably know Dale Chihuly with an eye patch. This is before the eye patch. But Narcissus worked closely with Dale Chihuly up at Pilchuck. At the school. He taught stained glass at the school. But this is where I get a little technical to give you some technical ideas about glass and how it goes, because this goes a little bit off the rail of the traditional stained glass. And hot glass is blown glass, right? So you've seen glass blowers. Here's another great shot of Chihuly working with a blowpipe. You see the piece of glass that he's got on the bottom right-hand corner there. And, this is the type of work that Chihuly was doing. This is, early 80s, but it's three-dimensional, right? This is something you can, blow, shape, form, use a lot of different colors because you're working with molten glass, and set it on a shelf, right? But Narcissus was a stained glass artist. He worked in two-dimensional, 2D, so, but he loved all the color that he was seeing made at Pilchuck. And so he was creating these pieces of glass from the blown pieces they were making. And he got to the point where the only way to get the glass flat was to spin it in what's called a rondelle. And so you blow it into a big disc, basically. And so he started designing those and getting the glass blowers to blow them for him so he could then cut them up and use them in his window. You can see them on the table on the left-hand side there. And so what he would do is he would take this glass and put it on what's called a marver table there, and spread out the different colors of what we call glass frit, put it on the marver table, get what's called a gather of glass or a hot molten glass at the end of a blowpipe, and roll it onto those colors, right? And that's how you get that different colors on the blown glass. You get in there, you work it on, you attach it. You can string on more glass. There he's stringing on more glass on there to create more colors. There you can see what that strip of glass looks like on the molten glass. You keep blowing it and you start getting these rondelles, right? We call them rondelles, or these discs. And so here, what he was really after was glass like this, right? So if you think about being able to cut these things up and get these amazing patterns in the glass to work from to create a stained glass creation. So you can see he would actually sometimes use an entire rondelle and incorporate those into his panels. And so by cutting them up, he was able to get these really beautiful multicolored pieces and assemble them together to create, almost this kind of symphony of color in the panels. And very, very kind of intricate and interesting. And here they are actually leading or glazing the panel. So if you know anything about assembling a stained glass window, it's extremely hand laborious. So the leading of these windows became nearly impossible because he was just going with all these crazy lines. He wanted to have this crazy movement of color and glass. And so it basically became impractical because it was too expensive to make. So he was actually approached by a company called Bullseye Glass out of Portland, Oregon. And that Bullseye Glass is really behind making what's called warm glass. So Chihuly's, the blown glass, hot glass. Bullseye is the warm glass we call fused glass. And so in the 70s, Bullseye started making glass, just sheet glass. In the 80s, they started experimenting with fusing, which basically means taking that glass and fusing it together, which was not possible before this time. Basically, if you think about glass and its coloration, it comes from mineral oxides. And so if you fuse different colors of glass together, they're not compatible. They have different points of expansion. So over time, they'll stress each other out and crack. But Bullseye came up with a way to make all of their glasses compatible. And so early on in the 70s, and this is early 90s, they started putting this glass on a piece of flat sheet glass, putting it into the oven, pulling it out, molten, right? Here he is, it's molten, and he's taking with that steel stick, he's manipulating the glass to get it to what he wants to do, creating, just kind of crazy things like this. So this is a head that he made in 1993. This is totally experimental. No one was doing this at all at that time. And so it's a bit crude. He went back to the Bay Area. Narcissus spent most of his time, his career in the Oakland area, started working with a guy named David Ruth. And David Ruth was a glassmaker as well, but also very into working in kiln formed work, or this warm glass. There you see David kind of manipulating the molten glass in the kiln. And they worked together to come up with these heads. And so you can see they're much more sophisticated and interesting, and all the movement. And so that's one piece of glass that they were able to do. And so not only were we seeing that Narcissus could work on a huge scale, but he was also interested in the figure. And here he is. This is one of the earliest, or the first, kind of architectural scaled fused glass window, where that different colors of glass fused together to create this amazing effect and movement and color. And he continued here. You see in 1999, almost a decade later, continuing this idea with the head and the figure. And then he started introducing painting, right? So I was showing you the traditional painting that we did in the studio. Here, Narcissus is playing around with painting on the fused glass to create these kind of figures in this artwork. And so the idea that he could work with the figure and a large scale and fused glass, he was the perfect guy to help us with this project this commission we'd won. And so he was giving a class up in Denver when Tim saw this ad that he was doing. And I said, go take the class with Narcissus. Narcissus gave this little class. As you can see, the small kilns and the small workshop, they were there. There's half a dozen students. Tim went and he says, well, does anybody have any work they want to show me? And Tim raised his hand immediately. He says, I've got this design I want you to help me with. And he looked at it and he said, well, how big is it? And he said, oh, it's 3,400 square feet. He said, well, how are you going to make that? He said, well, that's why I'm here. So well, you're only going to be here 3 days. So well, that's why I want you to come down to Los Angeles and help us. And so we wined him and dined him a little bit. He came down to LA. He pondered the window and we played around a little bit. We started experimenting immediately. So we did a lot of testing to see what we could find. We went to Bullseye. We met with Dan Schroer. That's the owner there in the middle. Toured their facility and we said, look, we're really interested in making this fused glass window. No one had ever made a fused glass window this size before. He said, so we need your support. We need your technical help. And he said, of course. And so we made our very first panel up there at Bullseye. And so this was our very first panel. And you can see we were kind of playing around with how much color and variation we can get into it. And we figured, wow, if we can do this, all that color, and we can use our traditional painting techniques that we've learned, this is really spectacular. This is something we think we can really do something with this. And again, this is not something that anybody had really pursued. But the reality was we were in a 1920 building, 1910 building that has a little 200 amp box. And with, as you can see, working in warm glass, you need a lot of kilns. And so that wasn't going to work for us. So we found this facility over in South Pasadena. On the left-hand side there, you see all that glass. That's our studio that basically found for our guys to make this massive window, set Tim and Narcissus loose on it, and they got into production. And so we bought all of this equipment, set up this facility, and got to work. And so I think what's so exciting about this in terms of the stained glass world, and what I think, kind of the message I hope I get across is how this is going to change the world of stained glass and the art world in stained glass. And it's this ability to basically paint with glass, to create transitions of color, paint strokes. And so I show you this kind of frit. This frit is basically ground up glass that Bullseye makes. And, they use 4 different sizes. Each size creates a different effect. But all this glass, if you use it right, creates all this beautiful technique, right? And so what I wanted to do is kind of show you, this is another lion we made. I'll show you the difference between a fused lion and a traditional painted lion, right? So if we see the two, you can see aesthetically the kind of the difference of what they look like. And so what we did is we found that if we take a base sheet of clear glass, again, a bullseye clear glass, we paint on it the techniques that we wanted to get the details that we were looking for. We'd lay out colored glass, again, bullseye glass laid out into different shapes to create values that we wanted in certain areas. And then we'd cover it and fill it with frit. And as you can see, it's just a hand process. You just cover those areas and the effects that it gives you. So you see all of those colors and all the texture and all these kind of amazing, look at the eye, just the little elements of green and purple in this, maybe 1.5 to 2-inch eye that makes up the whole lion. So this idea, this concept we took and we were able to really create all of our figures in this really amazing combination of traditional and contemporary techniques. We were also able to create what we call pre-mades, and we would take the frit. And if you take the frit and you put it in the kiln in these kind of almost like I said, brushstroke positions, you kind of spread out the frit. When it fuses, when you heat it up, it fuses together and it creates these beautiful techniques. And we would place those out. So we could place those out, move them around, and then fuse them back onto more color base sheets. So we would combine them with those clear base sheets and more frit on top of the pre-mades and create this wonderful kind of texture and movement in the glass that we, really had no other way to do. And we were kind of making this up as we go. Even Narcissus was learning how to do this as we were making it. And so we were able to make these beautiful flowers. Techniques, again, a combination of pre-mades. This is a wonderful California poppy. We wanted to put a California poppy in this window, even though it was going to Kansas City. And of course, you have to have stone sunflowers in a window from Kansas City. Some of the flowers are my favorite stuff. And then more, the third major kind of breakthrough we had was in making the face of Christ, which was obviously the most important panel in the whole window. If the face of Christ didn't work, the whole window would not have worked. It was the most difficult window to make. And so basically this combination of our idea of making pre-made glass, you can see on the right-hand side, that table on the far right-hand side, all this glass that we made, we pre-made that with combination of not only frit, but taking strips of cut glass, colored, and then we would create these transitions of color in single sheets, and we'd cut them up and place them almost like a mosaic. And so they were cut up, laid into, assembled together on top of the painted base sheet that I explained to you. And we were able to create this kind of, face. And again, they wanted a Christ that wasn't identifiable, right? In terms of his race or, identity is this kind of multi identity Christ or multicultural Christ that wasn't kind of one or the other. And so you can see those eyes there. There's hundreds of pieces just in those eyes. It's pretty spectacular. And so we plugged away, we cranked out these windows. You can see the scale of it there, how large this thing was. And we were able to finish it on time for Easter. As you can imagine, it was for Easter, right? And resurrection. But then the idea is, okay, so where do we go from here, right? What do we do? And I think this is kind of this West Coast idea, this concept that I wanted to get across of, this tradition and what we're seeing going on in Germany. And this hot glass tradition that's a very American, Dale Chihuly leading it up in Seattle, outside of Tacoma, Seattle area, and then Bullseye on the West Coast in Portland, and then of course all the wonderful artists in California, right? So this combination, I think, is to me the pattern that I saw when I was researching the book of like, why is this happening here and now? And I'd say, in terms of the history and the history of glass, and the West Coast, I think, has this energy where this was able to happen. And so we continue to work with Narcissus. This is a design that he did after that. This was a dome that he made completely out of fused glass. So this is all fused glass. This is for a home, and if you can believe it, a home in Newport Beach. And it's pretty spectacular, this kind of phoenix kind of coming out of the universe in a way there. And that's installed there. I'm trying to still get better pictures of it. And then the other big thing I wanted to do, since we had built this facility, right, we were done with our project, is we said, we've got to get this out into the world. And so what we did is we started approaching artists, and some of the artists that responded the strongest or the quickest were the street artists. And they're, what I'm finding is that artists in general, especially painters, are looking for different mediums, right, of other ways to work and create artwork. And, they don't want to just show in galleries. They want to have other opportunities. And so the street artists got it right away because they work in different, environments anyway. David's a character. You can actually see this piece up at the Forest Lawn Museum. It showed up at the Sullivan Goss Gallery in Santa Barbara with some of his other work. It was kind of interesting. We started approaching a lot of gallery artists, and the beauty of being in Los Angeles and even in Highland Park is there's so many artists that live in the area. And this is Amir Falla, very colorful work. He's represented by Shulamit Nazarian Gallery, which is on La Brea. But he does these amazing pieces where he covers people's faces and has them hold something kind of personal to them. And this was a self-portrait that he made. But here you can see all of this wonderful strips of glass that when it gets fired, it gets transformed into that. And so this is one piece of glass after it's been fused. We can go back and hand paint it to create the shading of the folds in the garment, these transitions. We actually created these little frit balls that created texture on the sock monkey. And so we're able to do all these really kind of interesting things that we were not able to do before we started this journey with the Kansas City project. And so Amir actually showed these pieces in galleries. He's sold them all now. And so it's kind of interesting to see. And what we're seeing is now Amir is working in larger works. You can see in public art. Somebody's scrolling on our scene here, a little KKK. Do we have a hacker?
Yeah, looks like we have a hacker.
And here you can see this is a public art project we just did with Amir. This is at Vermont and Wilshire. This is the new mental health county building. This is up on the 8th floor. And we just installed these. So these are just pictures off my phone. I haven't done a great, haven't gotten these photographed yet, but they're pretty spectacular. And you can see this amazing view of Los Angeles up there. And so we're really excited to see not only the gallery artists working in the gallery, but they're also wanting these public art projects and these projects that work in different areas. Michael Davis, we work with Michael Davis on a kind of a nice small project in Orange County.
Julian, is there any way to stop that jerk?
I'm trying to figure out who it is. Oh, wow.
What is this? Is this somebody that's certainly not one of our paying members, right? It's just somebody popping in here. I'm sorry for this, guys. That's such an adventure, this Zoom stuff. Let's, David, I'm sorry for this. Let's continue.
All right.
And then hopefully I can get that kid and squash him.
This is Laura Myers. The host should have something called security at the bottom of your screen that you can turn on, which would eliminate that.
Thank you, Laura. Jillian, do you have that?
I hope you do, whoever it is, the host.
We've never had this before.
Yeah, that's the first time I've seen that too. Disturbing.
Interesting. All right. Go ahead. Continue, David. Judson, can we continue this?
All right. Is it back up? Can you see it?
I see you. Let me see.
Can you share? I don't think I shared. Hold on.
There we go. We're back.
Okay. So we, again, just kind of this idea of the public art and our collaborations. This is another local artist, Anna Elizabeth, that did a county firehouse up in Simi Valley. So she took a lot of themes from the firefighters. And again, these beautiful kind of windows that we were able to fuse together into a single piece. Stephen Michaels is back.
Is that what this yellow thing is? His name is Stephen Michaels.
Yeah, you see him?
Hey, Stephen, can you hear me?
His name is Stephen Michael.
Yeah.
Stephen, if you can hear me, can you get a life?
Let me see. I don't see Stephen Michael.
Do you see the security thing that she was talking about?
Yes, but I don't see.
This is very disturbing. These crazy, terrible people.
Well, they have nothing. This person obviously has nothing better to do.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Brian? Maybe he's Brian. Maybe Brian will know. I'll call him while we're.
Yeah, it's the idea is trying to figure out who it is. Looks like they're Chinese.
Not necessarily.
No, right.
Not necessarily at all.
Yeah, I cannot find. I cannot find anybody.
Okay.
Oh,
this
look
is
at this.
just disgusting.
Can you get this jerk off of there? Hey, Brian.
We permitted the shoots of evil to spring up in the furrows of good that we have found.
I see this. I see.
Is there a way to get it off?
We're being bombed.
This is
Just
Laura
make
again,
me
if you
host
can hear
again.
me over this.
Jolyn,
If you just,
Jolyn,
Yes.
Brian said to make him host again.
Or co-host.
yeah, what you need, this is Laura. What you need to do is eliminate screen share from everybody except the host.
Yeah,
If you
okay.
want to give me permission, I can do that for you guys.
Jolyn and everybody, just go to speaker share. Don't do all share. Go to speaker share.
The witch, I, and the traitor, and the scoffer of the religion, the mouth of
Everybody go to speaker share only.
be warned.
I'm not allowing anybody to share a screen.
Ends with thoughtless lust. Will burn in horrible agony forever.
Speaker share.
Forever and ever.
Jolyn, make me the host again.
Frenzy with such pains as you have never
Yeah, if you
known.
make me a host, I can take care of them. I think they're still in here.
Jolyn,
Make Jack
Brian the
McLean.
host.
How do I make the host?
You should make Brian the host. He's pretty good at handling Zoom stuff.
There you go.
Okay, let's go. Okay.
With one abstention, and so
Have you made me the host again?
Yeah. Yeah, she just did. Yeah.
Okay, I'm host now. Okay.
So the next item is B,
Um,
and then it's standing committee.
one participant can share at a
Let me
time.
just
Hold
make a
on.
few comments. This is so that the board may decide to place some people into.
Brian's in another meeting as well.
Sorry about that. Let me just.
That's okay. We're happy that you're able to do this.
Okay, who can share? Only hosts. Okay, one participant at a time. We can share all participants, and who can start sharing with someone else?
Who's Jack McLean?
That's me.
Oh, you're not the hacker, I'm assuming.
No.
Jack, how do you know how to do this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will make you the co-host. How does one do this, just for future?
There should be a security tab. And then if you go in,
Okay. Do you have it?
yeah, I think I got it.
So the paradise where our maidens away. We are men that love death just as you love your life. For the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. For the soldiers that fight in the day and the night.
Jack?
Going forth, preparing to roar. Are the brothers of light with kuffar inside.
Okay.
They're some money and weapons are heavy, but soldiers of Allah are more than ready. But the soldiers
Where is that
of
coming
Allah
from?
are more than ready. For the sake of Allah, we we will march to the gates of the paradise where our maidens await. We defend that love death just as you love your life. We're the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. We're the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. Defending the pride of our sisters who have cried, for fearing none but the Almighty is one. Their voices motivated the men who migrated to fulfill the duty of making God's word the greatest, to fulfill the duty, making God's word the greatest. For the sake of Allah, we will march to the gates of the paradise where our maidens await. We are men that love death just as you love your life. We're the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. We're the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. Oh, my brother, that is the way to bring back the honor of our glorious days. The promise of Allah will always remain, that fighting for His sake is the ultimate gain. That fighting for His sake is the ultimate gain. We will march to the gates of the paradise where our maidens await. We are men that love death just as you love your life. For the soldiers
Somehow, hold
the
on.
day and the night. For the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. And now the time has come for the battles to be won. Shahada on our tongues.
I'm
as
very
our
sorry
hearts
about
beat
this.
as
This has
one.
never happened to me
Sunnah
before.
is alive, khilaf on the rise. The
People are
flag of
starting to sign
Tawheed
off
shining
too,
bright
Richard.
before our
Okay.
eyes. Tawheed shining
Should
bright
we just close it?
before our eyes.
Brooke?
Allah, we will march to the gates of the paradise where our maidens await. We are men that love death just as you love your
Yeah,
life.
it's Brooke.
For the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. For the soldiers that fight in the day and the night.
Oh, wow.
So sorry about this. Hey, David, are you still there?
Have we lost David?
I don't blame him.
No, David is here.
Blame
I'm
blame
here.
him if he went.
Oh, hold on. Hold on.
It seems like it's from another country.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Try it again.
Okay, you gotta maybe see if you can share. See if I can share.
Yep.
Just.
Well, it's quiet now.
Yeah, so maybe you did something right, Brian. Thanks.
I feel bad for, well, there's still 25 people here. Sorry, everybody, for this. This was really unexpected. It's like the streaker that ran through the Academy Awards that time. Except that this isn't as entertaining. All right.
So I'm still trying to share.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Well, David, maybe you should just accept questions now.
Yeah, I think we're pretty far into it. So does anybody have any questions?
David, that was such a great presentation. And so that's what I love about these Zoom things. It's like a window on something that we're so not involved in. It's just fascinating to see. And then, all that what's going on?
Got it again.
Hey, you could leave, buddy, go away.
Wow.
Damn. Oh,
Angry guy.
yeah, nasty, whoever the hell he is.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everybody. I'm sorry that we were cut it short, but
No, and I appreciate it. I think maybe we should cut it short because I don't want to insult you more with this garbage. So,
Brooke again.
all right, goodbye. Goodbye. David, David, I want to thank you. Let's just cut this short because I don't want to get rid of this guy. David Judson, I want to thank you so much for this presentation. And
It was excellent. Thank you.
so good. So good. And,
All right. Stay safe. We'll get these this figured out.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so sorry about this,
All
but
right.
you did a great presentation, and I don't
Take
know.
care.
I must apologize to all the people on here as well. This never happened, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Crazy. Okay. Thanks,
Who is
guys.
Jack? Thank you. Who's Jack McLean?
I don't know. He came in and then
Well, who is he? Do you know him?
nope.
Well, somebody just said Jack McLean is. It says it's Jack McLean's screen.
Yeah, I just took him out again. He keeps getting readmitted into the room.
So he's the hacker.
Yes. He's
Yeah.
the hacker. I
Oh.
thought he was talking to us. It's very, I don't know why.
Yeah.
there's such
I asked him. I
something-
said, "Are you the hacker?" And he said, "No." I thought he was some.
No.
I did too.
You can't expect a hacker to admit to it.
I guess no. I guess. Wow, that was an
Okay.
adventure. All right.
That certainly was an adventure.
Well, never a dull moment here at the Winter Square Hancock Park.
All right. Well, listen. All right, you guys are on an executive committee. We have a meeting tomorrow at 4, please. And Joseph's going to meet me there to get some stuff at 3:30. So I'll be there as well.
Perfect. I'll be there too.
Thank you, Joseph. And then I got to apologize again about this. This was so crazy, and we're going to make sure that it doesn't happen the next time. So anybody else have anything? Jack McLean, you still there? He's not there anymore. Oh, there's Jack McLean. Oh no, it's Jane Gilman.
I'm a hacker.
My house was built in 1919, has 2 windows. Are they made by Judson? Susie, I'd love to answer that, but David left because of the disruption of the hacker. So we'll get you his email, actually, and maybe you could ask him directly. Any other questions? No, I don't think. I don't think so.
Can we set up a tour at Judson's?
Yeah, I think so, but not now. They're closed. But, somebody there? It's like dealing with poltergeist, this thing. No, but I think it's a great idea. That's definitely a great idea. And I'm sure Fluff and all of them have been there, but I've never been there. I'd love to go there. That would be a wonderful tour. I wanted to say that we're doing this, there's this garden tour, progressive garden tour in Pasadena on the 19th of June. And we're going to talk about it tomorrow at the meeting. But I bought 2 tickets, one for my daughter, myself, and Judy's going. 12 o'clock is the time on the 19th. And I sent the email out with a link to the membership a while ago, but we're going to do it. Joseph, I think you'd like that too. Do you like gardens?
Of course, that'd be great.
There you go. The 19th at noon is when we're getting a group together to go. But we're gonna, you got to pay for the tickets directly on their link.
The 19th of May?
19th of June. 19th of June.
That's what I figured. Okay.
Yeah, the 19th of June. Suze, I see you said I want to go there too. Yeah, it's great. I sent the link a while ago. It's the Pasadena. What the heck is it? Hold on, I'll tell you what it is. It's the, Judy sent it to me. It's the Pasadena Gardens tour.
Perhaps you can resend the email to the membership.
I will. Yeah, and I'll tell them that we're kind of getting a group together. It's $60, but it's 3 beautiful houses and the gardens, and it looks terrific. So we're gonna try to do that on the 19th of June. All right. Okay, guys, this has been a little bit of an adventure, this Jack McLean. I wonder if he's related to Fluff McLean.
I think not.
She might have had something to do with it.
I don't know who this guy is. But I bet you he doesn't pronounce it McLean.
McLean. Yeah, he was quite an adventure, boy, I'll tell you.
It was anti-everything.
Yes. I'm on Zoom a lot, as I know Marlene is and other people. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, that was so weird.
It's
so
pretty
weird.
bad, really bad.
Well, we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. So
Well, you sound so confident, but who knows how to stop it?
I hope. Do you think you got into my computer
perhaps,
too?
Yeah, perhaps
Cancel his membership.
perhaps setting up password will help. We didn't have password for our meeting.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll talk about it tomorrow night at the meeting. Anyway, guys, this has been an adventure and fun in a way. But I want to thank David. I know he's gone now, but he did a great job and fascinating to see all those beautiful stained glass windows.
They were beautiful.
Anything else, anybody? Should we wrap it up?
Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Good
Good
night,
night.
everyone.
Good
Makes
night,
it-
everybody. So long, Jane. Jane, I have the flyers. I'm going to drop them off at the Chronicle.
At the Chronicle. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. I'll talk to you later.